Welcome back to Extraordinary Women on thatchannel.com. I'm your host, Shannon Skinner. Well, I'm joined by Glain Roberts-McCabe, who's the president and founder of Executive Roundtable. She's based in Toronto. She's here to talk about leadership. Later in the segment, before we take a break, I'll have my regular Good to Know Minute when I ask my guests for their top tip on creating a successful life, and you're going to hear Glain's. Glain, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shannon. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. Now, you're based in Toronto, so you didn't have to go very far to get to the studio today.
No, I just had to do the school drop in the morning. Like most mothers that are out there will relate to this. It's always you're hoping that you can drop the child at school in one piece and then make it to wherever you have to get to. So it all worked out this morning.
How old are your kids?
I have one child who is 7 and yeah, in grade 2. So she's enjoying the trials of math.
And keeping you busy then, I would imagine,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
Now, your passion is spreading enthusiasm for the rewards of leadership. Why?
That's such a good question. Yeah, people ask me all the time why the Executive Roundtable, and I think for me, I've been leading for a long time. I'm the oldest of 4 children. My brothers would probably say that I started bossing them around as soon as they started popping out of the womb. And I think like most people who grew up and found themselves leading teams and managing teams, it was so easy to get bogged down in what I would call the day-to-day grind of management, the performance reviews, the giving people feedback, all of that kind of stuff. And I think it was after I'd been doing it for about 8 or 9 years that I really started to get exposed to other things around leadership and really started getting it, that, this was an amazing privilege, it was an amazing opportunity. I could really do something important and impactful with the people who worked with me. And so that's what I'm trying to do with what we do at the Executive Roundtable, is reconnect leaders to that aspect of leadership.
Now, you grew up in Ottawa. Well, actually, you were born and raised in England.
Yes, many moons ago.
Yeah, and you were mentioning to me before you moved to Ottawa, or when you had moved to Ottawa, that it was really quite a drastic change for you.
Yeah, I mean, people probably wouldn't appreciate that now, but we moved in the mid-'70s, and we definitely experienced culture shock on many levels. I mean, England at the time, well, England today is still very, I would almost call it tribal. There's a lot of hierarchy. There's really a working class, a middle class, an upper class. So the class system is more evident over there, and I think coming
there is
to Canada,
definitely some distinctions.
huge
for sure,
distinctions.
Yeah.
I mean, and then on top of that, I'd never seen a McDonald's before. I'd never, seen a
a
drive-in movie
thing.
theater. Yeah, I know. But so real at the time. But now you could go over, and it's so North Americanized, really around the globe that I don't think people would have that same experience. But for us, it was a huge culture shock making that move.
So you came to Ottawa, and when you were young in high school, you had a mentor who encouraged you to become an illustrator.
Yeah, that didn't exactly pan out. Yeah, misguided mentoring. I think as a teacher, I think like a lot of us, probably in our teens, we tend not to listen to our parents, but we'll listen to other people that are in our lives. And I had an art teacher who was a really wonderful person and took a shine to me. I think that's one of probably the key things about mentoring, isn't it? Is that it's somebody who sees something in you and they want to encourage that potential. And so she saw something in me and said to me in grade 9, you should be an illustrator. You should be, and specifically an illustrator for advertising. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to go to Sheridan College for illustration, and that's what I'm going to do. So I was very single-minded towards that goal. And unfortunately, 3 months into my great career as an illustrator, realized this isn't what I want to do. Uh-oh, so now what? And kind of had to switch gears. So it's interesting when I think so much of that is part of really understanding who you are and not what other people are telling you should do with your life. That was a great lesson for me to learn at that age, although I had to keep repeating it for many years. But anyway.
Now you are trained Second City Improv, which I think is really cool. I've actually had some guests on my show in the past who have trained there, and it's something that I've always thought I would love to do.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a key there for me. Did you dream about being a comedian?
No, never a comedian. Always wanted to be like a TV host or a radio show host. And I think I'll probably do that at some point. I always loved, I didn't like being the center of attention. I liked being the person on the side with really interesting people. And so I think what really is fantastic about improv is that it's actually a team dynamic. With improv, it's not about how smart you are, and how clever you are and how funny you are. It's really about what you can take from what the other people throw at you. So I think as I did it because I just love drama and I wanted to get back into it. In my 20s, I was sort of tired of doing business course after business course, and but it really helped me in terms of, I think, my listening, my really, letting go of my own agenda, having to be in improv. So I think as a manager and as a leader, I got great benefit out of that program. I recommend it to anybody. And if you have to do a lot of speaking on your feet, definitely improv's the way to go. And Second City runs a great program.
Now you talked a bit off the top about leadership, why it's important to you, but why did you start or how did the origins of the Executive Roundtable really come to be? How did you choose that name? Yeah,
so the Executive Roundtable, I had spent a good chunk of my professional career bouncing around. The common factor had been I was leading. I was always leading teams. I was always managing teams. And for the most part, I was doing it by the seat of my pants. And I found myself working in a consulting firm that focused on leadership development. And ironically, it was the first time I'd ever had the opportunity to look at my own leadership. And I was somebody who was continually expanding my scope very quickly. So every 18 months to 2 years, I was either changing jobs or getting promoted or being given additional responsibilities. And I found in this firm, which offered wonderful classroom training sessions and access to coaches and assessment, I was looking for something else. I was going to my boss and saying, I think I need a mentor. And I was sitting around with other leaders on breaks in our programs and talking to them about the real issues that they were facing. And I started to think at that time, where can a leader go, and not a new leader, but somebody who's got experience under the belt, where can you go and actually talk to other leaders? And I think I was sharing with you the other day, everybody always says it's lonely at the top. And I started getting really irritated by that phrase, because I was theoretically, I suppose, at the top of my division, and I became managing partner and I was running this firm. But I was in my early 30s. I wasn't at the top in terms of my career. I still had, another 20 years runway to go. And I kept saying to people, it's not just lonely at the top, it's lonely in the middle on the way to the top. Everybody's lonely in a leadership role. And so that was really the genesis of the Executive Roundtable. And I called it the Executive Roundtable because most of our members, and who we're for, are people who are at the director and VP level, who have aspirations and ambitions to keep growing in their leadership. They may not want to be the CEO, but they have an aspiration to move forward in their leadership careers and just in life and with the work that they're doing. So that was where the name came from. And the roundtable is this idea about exchange, exchanging experience. King Arthur had his round table of men who supported him, who gave him the real deal. And that sort of image was where that came from.
Now, we're going to take a break, and that means it's time for our Good to Know Minute. And Glain, by the way, you've got a great name. I love it. Glain, I know that you've got a great tip for the audience.
Yeah, so my Good to Know Minute is always stay curious about yourself, who you are, and what makes you work. And I think that's so important today, especially for people who are working, because we cannot leave our careers and our lives in the hands of our employers. And the more you know and understand what makes you tick, what are your values, what really, as we say in coaching all the time, juices you up, what gets you excited, the more you know that about yourself, the more you'll be able to drive and be in control of your own career. And I think today that's just so important for everybody.
Well, thank you so much.